INFJs are rare. They make up only about 1 to 2% of the total population. But that still means you've probably met one, since 1 in 100 or even 1 in 50 is an INFJ. But you may not know that you met one, because INFJs are also known as being chameleons. They're extremely good at adapting to and fitting into the social environment in which they are in, and making people feel like they're just like them. What does it mean to be a chameleon? And is it a matter of being inauthentic and being a people pleaser, or is it something different? So let's talk about that. So first off, what is an INFJ? INFJ is one of 16 categories of the Myers-Briggs personality type. It's important to understand that each type is made up of 4 categories or spectrums. In the case of the INFJ, they are introverted, I, which is on a spectrum between introversion and extroversion. And no one is 100% introverted or extroverted all the time. If you're in the I category, it means you just simply fall more on the introverted end of the spectrum than the extroverted. N stands for intuitive. Intuitive means that you understand things without having to think about them, without necessarily knowing how you understand them. It's not psychic, it's not a superpower. It's just that we interpret the same amount of data that you get from your senses at a subconscious level and understand it on a subconscious level. So we just kind of seem to understand things and know things before we can tell you exactly why it makes sense to us. We know when somebody's lying to us. We know when someone is in emotional pain, when they're trying to hide it. We sense these things kind of automatically. Next is feeling. Feeling versus thinking is a spectrum of using logic to make your decisions versus basing your decisions on your values and beliefs. Most people tend to use primarily logic. INFJs tend to lean more towards feeling. But again, it's a spectrum. Nobody does 100% all the time. And finally, there's judging. Judging tends to be people who like to have a plan. They like to know where things are going. They have a kind of a goal set in mind and they want to achieve that goal. Whereas perceiving people tend to be more easily go with the flow. To give you an example of the difference between judging and perceiving from one of my real life experiences that happened just this week, is I had a planned meeting at a certain time that got canceled, but I forgot to check my messages and I arrived for the meeting and no one was there. So now I had an hour and a half of time to kill before my next thing on my calendar. Most people would say, great, I got some time to kill, can do whatever. Me, this kind of threw me into a loop. It took me a minute to kind of readjust because I was really uncomfortable with this. I don't know what to do with myself. That's a judging person. That's that judging characteristic. That's the INFJ personality type. So how does this personality type become a chameleon? Well, it starts very early as children. When researchers are studying the difference between introverted children and extroverted children, one of the things they notice with introverts is they are slow to adapt to new social environments. What will happen is if you take a child, you introduce them to a group of new kids, they tend to stay on kind of the outskirts for a while. What the introverted children are doing is they're observing the social cues and the dynamics of the group. When they're ready and comfortable, they then begin to interact with the group. And they do so typically very, very well because they've already internalized the social dynamics already used in that group. So they integrate very well once they decide to integrate, and they become very well liked. By the time they get to be adults, this process is automatic to them. Next comes the intuitive component. People who are intuitive, they tend to understand things that are with other people more easily. They just naturally get it. When you combine that with introversion, you very often have what's called a highly sensitive person, somebody who's extremely tuned in to the emotional cues of everybody around them. There's other parts of being highly sensitive that don't have to do with emotional cues, that have to do more with the environment, but we're not going to talk about that today. An IN person is very good at reading other people. So they see when they're happy, when they're sad, when they're hiding things, when they're maybe feeling down and saying, oh, I'm fine, but trying to brush things off, that say, oh, that doesn't really matter, when in fact they feel it very deeply. And will respond to it. They feel empathy, so they feel what this other person is feeling, and they're gonna go with that. They're gonna lean into that because they want that other person to feel seen, to feel heard. Because also being empathetic, we understand what it feels like when people don't understand us. So we want to give that person the comfort of feeling understood. So that's what happens when you combine introversion and intuition. So when you combine these two traits, these are people who understand the world and the pain and the joy of everyone around them on a level that tends to be much deeper than the average person to begin with. So now we're going to jump past the feeling into the judging. INFJs have deeply held values and beliefs. They tend to be things that we have thought about and come to believe, and they don't necessarily line up with the standard values of everyone around us. And so we learn growing up that when you're different from other people, you get treated differently, bullied, you get ostracized. And so we learn to hide these things, to just tamp them down, not express them. But it doesn't mean we don't feel them or believe them. We just learn to not express them. And this is important because not expressing them is not the same thing as changing them or hiding them. It's simply just not voicing that opinion, that belief, that value. So how does this all come together to be the chameleon? Well, when we interact with somebody, we want to connect with them. Introverts really want to connect with people on a deep level. We like those one-on-one conversations. We like, having meaningful conversations about things that are important to us, conversations about ideas, emotions, personal growth, things we're excited about, things you're excited about. We like to really connect. We look for these opportunities to really connect. And so when we do connect, we combine that connection with that empathy and that intuition, and we just automatically mirror you. And so we might not we might think in our head, I don't agree with that opinion, but voicing that opinion is going to break that connection. And it may not be important enough that we really want to have an argument about that or even a heated discussion about that. And it may be something like, somebody is very much into astrology, but the topic of the conversation isn't really about astrology. That's just something they mentioned. So we could go off on a sidebar on a tangent, but we choose not to. And this might be something that we've developed as a basic way of operating in the world. That would be the judging part. We have a plan. When this situation comes up, this is how we're going to respond. Or we have a goal for this conversation. We see where this conversation is going. We see that it has a good outcome if we could take it in this direction, but we can derail that outcome if we go in this other direction. So we just don't. When we do that, we have these deep connections with people. So the connection I have with one person over one topic or in one environment, like somebody at work versus somebody I know socially, somebody who's into the same music as me versus someone else who's into the same movies as me, someone who has the same political stance as me versus someone who has a different political stance with me. I still can develop these deep connections with these people, but they're going to be kind of limited to that area. Another aspect of INFJs is we tend to be very private. So one of the ways in which we can develop this deep connection with people while being private is putting the emphasis on you, putting the spotlight on you. So you're interested in this, you saw this movie, you really liked it, you want to talk about it. So then you're going to tell me about the movie, and I'm going to say, see, you got really excited about something, that's that empathy, and say, well, why did that excite you so much? Or did that relate to this other thing we talked about before? And it puts a spotlight on you, and you feel really seen, and you like being around me, and so that validates me without really telling you much about me. And this is an important thing that you don't really actually learn that much about me in these interactions, because you feel deeply connected, and you see me and you think I'm just like you because you feel that connection. Then I'll go and have a different interaction with somebody else, and they'll feel as deeply connected and it'll be completely different. And I'll change my body language to match theirs, and I'll change my voice tonality to match theirs. This is something that's called mirroring, and we actually know there are parts of the brain, there are certain neurons in the brain called mirror neurons that light up when we do this, and it creates this connection to people, and it goes as deep as matching breathing patterns, and heart rates begin to synchronize when people get really connected in this way. So this is an unconscious thing. INFJs are very good at sliding into this state with another person very quickly, and that I think relates to our intuition and our introversion and our empathy. So what I see happens a lot with INFJs is we end up with these different groups of friends and people that we interact with, and then sometimes they'll overlap, and somebody from one group will see us interacting with another group and go, what? Who is this person? How are you the same person that interacts with me? At the very least, it can be very surprising, and on one level you can see it as, wow, this person has a lot more depth than I knew, because there's a whole part of them that I had no idea about because they never shared it with me. On the other hand, it can feel like a betrayal because they're like, wow, this person has a whole part of their life that they don't share with me. And I've seen both in my life. Some people have gotten really upset and really offended when they find out something about me that they didn't know, simply because it never came up and I never felt like sharing it because I'm private. And other people see that as, somebody having hidden depths. So the question now becomes, are INFJ chameleons, are we being inauthentic? Are we betraying people? Are we being people pleasers because we just want somebody to feel good and we're just using our powers to make them feel good at the risk of lowering the value of ourselves? I think yes, as far as the people pleasers, an unhealthy INFJ, one who has not fully realized their capacity and their value, will absolutely use this chameleon ability to please people and to tamp down their own person, because even though they have their strong values, like I said, there are times when we won't speak up for our values because it's really not important. Whereas if somebody has a disagreement over human rights and dignity, that is something where you really shouldn't tamp down and say, look, that's insulting my dignity and it's disrespecting me as a human being, and you don't have a right to do that. Whereas if you haven't developed yet the courage and the wherewithal to stand up for that in yourself, you will be doing people pleasing to the point where you're devaluing yourself. So that's where the chameleon can be kind of bad. On the other hand, if you're not doing that, if you just aren't coming in a situation where that happens, where you have to speak up, where you should speak up, then you're not actually devaluing yourself. You're just showing a side of yourself that person gets to see, and there's whole other sides of you they don't see. So it can be both authentic and inauthentic depending on where you are in your particular journey and how strong you are and self-aware you are in defending yourself and speaking up for yourself and respecting yourself and demanding that respect from other people and drawing boundaries and all of that stuff. That is something that a lot of people have to work on, INFJs in particular, because we do want everyone around us to feel seen and heard and happy and healthy and live a good life. That is because we're deeply empathetic. We want that for everybody. And sometimes we can be taught through society as children and growing up that to achieve that, we have to sacrifice our own happiness and well-being. If that's where you're at, there's a link down below. You can connect with me for a one-on-one consultation. We can talk about whether maybe some coaching will help you with that. The authentic version of this is really just, I like to think of it as a diamond. If you have a diamond like you would in a ring, nice, it's got all these different faces on it, and these faces are nice and shiny, and if you look in really close at one face, it reflects back at you. So if the INFJ is that diamond, you're looking at that one face that they're showing you, and they're reflecting you back. So you're still seeing the diamond, the surface of the diamond, and you're seeing your own self reflected back. Both of those things are genuine. What you're not seeing is the other side of the diamond, the back side. So you see this side, but you don't see what's on the other side. And someone standing on the other side is seeing the diamond from that angle and seeing their own reflection reflected back. And sometimes if you're used to looking at one side and you come in and you see the other side, that can be a little bit shocking. But it's not any less authentic, because INFJs are very deep. All these one-on-one connections that we have with people inform us. We learn a lot about ourselves. We learn a lot about the world. We develop new interests, and we like to explore those interests. This is a thing about introverts, is we like to go down those rabbit holes a lot. We end up having very deep, complex personalities, and we have a very rich inner life, which even deepens that complexity. But again, until somebody spends an enormous amount of time with us, they don't get to see it all. So if you only know an INFJ in one environment or one situation, like just at work or just at a particular bar that you go to or just at your intramural sports team or just at the gym or whatever it is that you do, if you only know them from that one area, that's probably going to be most of what you know about them. And they're really not going to share a lot more than that. But when you begin to meet up with them and interact with them in other environments and approach other topics with them, you're going to find out a lot more about them. And like I said, so a lot of times you might even not realize the person you're talking to is an INFJ because they're matching you. If you're an extrovert, they're extroverting with you because they have that ability. If you are really thinking and logical, they're going to appear to match that with you because they're going to talk to you about things that are logic. If you're somebody who really likes to be spontaneous, pay a little bit of attention because you might notice that they like to have a plan, but their plan is to let you lead things. That's one of the things I do as an INFJ. When I find somebody who's really extroverted and spontaneous and I want to go do this thing, I'll know in my head that while we're going to do that thing, if something more interesting pops up, this person is going to want to go do that. And so my plan, instead of, oh, well, we said we're going to that restaurant, we need to go to that restaurant and I'm going to be upset. Instead, my plan will be, I'm here to support them on their adventure. So when they veer off, I'm just going to go along with them and I'm going to continue to be supportive of them and enjoy their company and their experience. And so that's my plan. And so my plan then allows for spontaneity. It's just their spontaneity, not really mine. That's the breakdown of INFJ chameleons, how we operate, what we're thinking in our own heads. We are genuinely authentic people. We just tend to be deeper than we let a lot of people know when you don't know us in a deep way, when you haven't spent a lot of time with us, been with us in a lot of different environments. So if you come across this type of person, you come across an INFJ and you become surprised that there's something, these other sides to them that you never knew about, don't think of it as a betrayal because it's really not. It's just they're cautious and they haven't really gotten to know you well enough yet where they're going to begin to share these things. Once you begin to gain their trust and they know that they aren't going to be judged negatively by you, that they're not going to be told they're weird or that they're broken or that something's wrong with them in some way, and they begin to trust you in that way, then they will begin to open up and share a lot more of them. And that is like letting a chameleon go through a rainbow of colors. And it's a really beautiful thing. And you get to experience that instead of just seeing one color. That's the way a lot of my friends, my close friends, look at it, the people who I've let into my life on a deep level. And when I meet other INFJs, that's the way I approach them. It's like, I'm going to look at this one color that you're going to show me. And then when you're ready to show me another color, I'll say the other color. And eventually I'll get to see all your colors. All right. So that wraps up INFJ chameleons. I hope you found this informative. If you are an INFJ, please leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. What's going through your head when you're doing this? Do you even notice that you do this? Or is this something new to you? Or are you a people pleaser and you need to work on that? These are all things you can do. If you got questions about any of this stuff, ask them in the comments. If you need some personal guidance or advice, you can hit me up on my Wizio page. There's a link in the description below where you can ask me a question. I'll send you a personalized video response helping you out with this. And if you want some more in-depth one-on-one coaching, again, there's a link down below where you can have a consultation. We can see if coaching is a good fit for you. Because INFJs are some of the most amazing people you'll ever meet. We are some of the most amazing people in the world. We serve an absolutely important and vital purpose in society, but we're very rare and it can feel very isolating and alone until you come into your full power. So if that is something you're interested in, hit me up and let's talk about it. All right. Peace. Love you.